All right, welcome to the DePIN State. I'm Nick Hawks. Today I've got Amir Haleem with me. Amir, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super psyched to have you on. Make sure if you're watching this for the first time that you like and subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff so that you can see other great guests like Amir after this one. This show is all about updates in the DePIN space. So, Amir, what's going on? What have you guys been focusing on lately over at Nova?
Well, I mean, we got so much going on. Helium Mobile continues to be a huge focus of ours, as does 1663, which is our IoT division. And then just, tons of announcements coming. I'm not supposed to talk about any of them, apparently, according to this document I'm looking at. And we've got a lot of improvement proposals floating around in the Helium ecosystem, which is actually, I think, super cool. Like we're just proposing and voting on things like everyone else and arguing with people about why they're good or bad ideas. So some of it takes longer than we'd like, of course, but it's also super cool to see like real decentralized governance happening.
Yeah.
And as the sort of founder of it all, it's definitely interesting to watch it from now, like a sort of outsider's point of view, but super cool.
Yeah, that is interesting because it's a founder in two senses, right? In the sense of helium, and then really the whole deep in space. You're considered a godfather. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. So let's one of the things I wanted to kind of clean up is there's a lot of confusion about helium systems, Nova Labs, Helium Mobile, 1663. Like you just said, you guys have a lot on your plate. And Nova is really at the center of a lot of this, right? You guys are running the Helium packet router on the IoT side. You're running the whole mobile network. Maybe you're going into the hardware biz with Wi-Fi, and no comment on that is fine. But how do people think about Nova's role in the Helium ecosystem?
I want to think of us, and I hope that other people start to think of us as a participant in the ecosystem. One of the bigger ones, obviously, but just a participant, really. Like we do some work for the foundation when they ask us to, when they ask for help. But otherwise, we are focused on Helium Mobile and 1663 primarily, and Helium Mobile, I think, hopefully most of the listeners know, is our subscription cellular offering, and 1663 is a IoT focused business that's mostly commercial, right? So those are mostly business to business applications. We don't have any plans, at least right now, to do anything in the consumer world. So a lot of that is less, user facing, slower sales cycles, stuff like that, but sort of bubbling along really nicely, actually, in the background.
Yeah, the IoT stuff is funny, and I guess on this show we got like the opposite ends of the spectrum. Is that you're over doing 1663 selling to like the giant businesses, and I'm doing the Medio Scientific kind of selling to, a plumber and electrician and helping them kind of sell into helping their business out. So it's cool to see the entire kind of spectrum of what you can do in that world. But I want to focus mostly on mobile for this because that's where most of the hot news is. Let's talk about discovery mapping and how, as a Helium Mobile subscriber, they can earn tokens just for the mapping side.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think we learned or want to do better in the 5G and the mobile world than we did in the IoT world is to, I think, really focus on the user side of the experience. And I think that has kind of two ends to it. One is a complete product that users can use, and that's Helium Mobile itself. And then the other is how to sort of guide the community of deployers and participants in the Helium network to do the most useful things, both for themselves and frankly for us. And discovery mapping is a little bit of that, right? It's like how do we encourage users to voluntarily, and it's really important that it's voluntarily and in a rewardable manner, share things about their experience that is helpful to the network, right? So like where they are, how much data they're using, how much of that data is on Helium versus home Wi-Fi versus on T-Mobile, because they're sort of, I think of it as sort of three networks that Helium Mobile uses. Um, Someone's home Wi-Fi is not really related to us, but I consider it like a place that someone uses their phone. And then
Sure.
I think everyone knows, partnered with T-Mobile. So we use the T-Mobile network, and then we also use the Helium network. And so I think it's in our interest and hopefully the Helium community's interest that Helium Mobile subscribers predominantly use the Helium network. And so discovery mapping is a way to sort of share at a user level, like where that activity is happening, right? So if you've got users concentrated in one place using a ton of data, if I'm a hotspot deployer, like I want to know that so I can go capture that, right? And that's, that's sort of the idea behind discovery mapping.
Got it. So it's allowing people to kind of access the value that they're providing anyway, is you're making sure they get part of that.
Yeah, I
One
mean,
way
it's
to
a
think
much
about
more eloquent way of putting it, I think, than the way I put it. But yeah, that's right. And we think and we believe strongly that none of this stuff should be happening either without your consent and quite frankly, without there being some reason for you to do it in some rewardable way. And I think that's one of the interesting things about crypto in general, and specifically about Helium, is that we really saw a lot of that behavior, right? Like ideally the economic incentive for doing something is aligned with like what's good for the network and good for its participants. And most of the time that was true. Some of the time it's not true. It's a work
Yeah.
in progress, but it's that kind of thing. I mean, I'm offended by like traditional carriers just like reselling and using this data without your consent or without paying you for it in some way. And I hope that we get to really change that.
Now, do you think it'll change for the rest of the industry? Do you think the other MVNOs will follow your lead with this discovery mapping thing and giving some of that back to the users, or you think that's unlikely to happen?
I think it will go through the same stages, I think, as something like Helium IoT, or on a completely different level, something like Uber, where I think it's a joke at first, right? I don't think anyone in the incumbent industry like will take us seriously or take the whole concept seriously for a while, um, until they do. And I think we saw that with Uber probably the most like dramatically, where it went from being this sort of joke thing that should just be shut down to like toppling the whole like transportation industry, or changing the whole transportation industry, I should say. And so I would expect it to be like that. And it certainly would be a very rewarding outcome for me personally if one of the changes that both Helium and Helium Mobile brought to the world is that it's just not okay to like use that kind of data without some arrangement with the user, right? I think it's one of the more bizarre like aspects of telco that I really hate. And so if that was one of the sort of effects that happened, if Helium Mobile got really big and really popular and it caused users to demand that, then I would feel extremely happy with that, whatever happened.
Yeah, that'd be certainly something to be proud of. Now, let's see. You get to talk to a lot of the kind of the head honchos in the telco land, and kind of famously, it's fun to interact with some of the trolls on Twitter, like Peter Adderton, our favorite, maybe not the favorite Australian, but certainly in the top five, who was, funnily enough, a fan of Pollen. I mean, he's the founder over at Boost Mobile. But what do you like? What's your take on what these industry kind of titans are thinking of Helium right now, and maybe in the future? Do you think they're still kind of laughing, or are they starting to see that there's something here?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think for the most part, I think it's not serious enough yet. I think
Right.
there's, potential in it. And I think the IoT network was a good example of like what could happen. I don't think anyone predicted that kind of scale. Um, so I think there's some level of like curiosity and intrigue and mockery. Um, and that's the best way I could describe it. And I think someone like Peter Adderton is on all ends of that spectrum. I think he believes actually, I think, that something like helium is actually really needed in the industry. And you can see him very vocally complaining that guys like Spectrum and Comcast get to like use these Wi-Fi networks that people are kind of accidentally sharing.
Yeah.
And that, his MVNO Mobile X doesn't get to do that, right? He views that as unfair. And I think he has a reasonable point there. And it's back to that whole, are users aware of what companies are doing with their data, with their hardware, with their infrastructure, and are they being compensated properly for it? And I think that sort of, I'm sharing your Wi-Fi and you may not even know it, and I'm building a product taking advantage of that Wi-Fi that you don't know I'm sharing, is definitely one of those kind of dark patterns that feels similar to like Sidewalk or something like that I really dislike. So
Sure.
I think he is conceptually and philosophically aligned with what we're trying to do, but is also very much planted in the old world. And I think perhaps rightly so, skeptical of what we're up to. And I don't mind that
Sure.
at all. I think skepticism is healthy, and we certainly have not done this before, right? So there's a lot for us to learn, and it's probably very correct to be skeptical of us. But I think we know I think we know what users want and what we should do, and the question is just executing against that.
Yeah, that's always it. Is like you have your plan blows to pieces, and then you kind of figure out what you need to do right there. Right now, I got a ER doc of mine that always talks about WIN, WIN, like what's important now. Like that's what you've got to do.
That's
You
right.
mentioned Wi-Fi. Let's hit that a little bit more. I know there's a fair amount of kind of contention, certainly with my partner Max and you guys going back and forth on Discord about the best way to do Wi-Fi. Kind of talk me through what you're thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's most fascinating to me in the space right now is this. I think the industry term for it I've learned is wireless convergence, which is the idea of lots of different wireless technologies and protocols kind of working together. And to some degree, and this part I'm sort of making up, but I think it's true. And to some degree, the phone being the sort of orchestrator of that, right? Like, and you see that a little bit with iOS and the iPhone in particular are heading very hard into this direction where now it's eSIM only. They've got cellular data switching, so it will switch, data from one SIM to the other based on the circumstances. And you can throw Wi-Fi into the mix there. And so we are leaning very hard into that idea of, as a user, I frankly don't care whether I'm on Wi-Fi or cellular or satellite. It just doesn't, it doesn't matter
You just
to
want
me,
the thing
right?
to
Like the
work.
question
Yeah.
is, does it work where I need it to work, and is the price right to some degree? And so I view Wi-Fi as sort of another tool in the box that the Helium community gets to use to build networks, right? We know the cellular CBRS based gear is quite expensive in realistic terms. It's 1,500 to 8 grand or something like that. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
And there'll
Yep.
be a type of deployer for which that works. And the range is always going to be better. The quality of service is probably always going to be better on cellular. Like, there are a lot of things that cellular and CBRS will do a lot better than Wi-Fi. But price is definitely not one of them. The Wi-Fi gear we expect to be substantially cheaper. Within range, it will be faster, for example. Like, it doesn't have, it potentially has more throughput. But the
Sure.
service will be worse. Arguably, like the congestion is greater, and there's a bunch of other characteristics about it. But it's not supposed to be one or the other as much as just here's more stuff, right? Like, here are more ways
Yep.
to deploy a network at a completely different price point with different pros and cons. And so, one of the important inventions I think over the last several years is Passpoint, which is this technology that allows a device, could be a phone or a laptop or anything, to automatically authenticate with a Wi-Fi network using a certificate. And that to me is like one of the great unlocks that is sort of like hidden away in all of the conversation, because if I'm standing in a city, like, odds are I can see 50 Wi-Fi networks, right? But it's no
Right.
use to me whatsoever because I don't have any credentials for them, and they don't have any way for me to pay them or whatever, right? So it's just sort of
Yep.
there's no federation in Wi-Fi as a system. And so by using Passpoint, like, we will embed a certificate inside the SIM cards of Helium Mobile, which will allow those subscribers to automatically just jump on and off the Wi-Fi network whenever they're close to a Wi-Fi hotspot. And so that's a huge deal to me, because then it feels like cellular. Like, I go near a cell tower and I'm like on it, right? And you don't know or really care about the fact that you're hopping from tower to tower or where the tower is. Like, none of that matters, right? And so I hope that the Wi-Fi network on Helium works the same way for Helium Mobile subscribers, where whenever they're near one of these Wi-Fi access points, they'll just the phone by default will try and use the Wi-Fi network, and that's what we hope to see.
Got it. Got it. Now, pretty famously with the original Helium IoT network, I think you've said something before Helium came along. Centec had something like 100,000 gateways in the kind of 10 or so years before Helium comes, and then Helium comes and sells almost 1 million hotspots. So, and that drives the price down. I think Max was telling me that before all the hotspots came along, it was something like $1,000 if you wanted a gateway, and now you can. I just got an email I think this morning where the guy's like, "Hey, I've got 10 hotspots for $50." So, like a pretty dramatic price drop. Do you think the answer for success in this kind of mobile Wi-Fi side is getting out cheaper hardware, or is it going to be something else, or a combination?
I think the jury's out a little bit. My default feeling is that price matters a lot. One of the things I think Helium did really well was bring a lot of non-crypto people into the world of building decentralized networks. And part of the lever to do that, I think, is price, right? Like if stuff costs, I mean, it's just if stuff costs thousands of dollars, like the sort of available user base for that is much, much smaller, especially when it's a new concept that is unknown and, crypto is under fire. And like, you just want to remove as many barriers as you can. And we already saw it with IoT. Like even at $500, people were like, "It's just an overpriced Raspberry Pi." I'm like, dude, the one concentrator chip used to cost $160, right? Before Helium came along. Like, forget the rest of the stuff on that board. So yeah, Max is about right. Like we were buying LoRa gateways that were like $900, probably on the low end. And so, yeah, I always chuckle when I see the overpriced Raspberry Pi with an antenna. I'm like, well, what do you connect the antenna to? But anyway, I do think
Yeah.
price is a factor. And as we saw with IoT, I think people are very, very price sensitive. Unless you're in a face melting like bull market or something, right? Then people are paying 10 grand for a hotspot and no one cares. But I don't think counting on that kind of speculative aspect of things is a good idea, and that's certainly not what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's a long way of saying I think price matters a lot, but it's probably not the only thing. But I do think
Right.
it expands your audience.
Right. That makes sense. Let's see. So on DePIN State, we've got the Geonet question. This one today is you're considered, the godfather of DePIN. We talked about that at the start of the show. It's fun to talk about mobile, and we'll get back to it. But is there anything else that you're seeing from your perspective where you're like, that's a really cool project, and that you're excited about that's outside of the Helium sphere?
Honestly, all of them. I think they all are fascinating to watch, even if I wouldn't do it that way. It's really interesting to see someone do it that way, right? So for example, looking at really wireless, like the way they're approaching things, I think is kind of fascinating. Like where you have to be sort of an accredited investor to be one of the builders. And I'm so curious about that. A lot of advantages to doing that way and a lot of disadvantages. The same with something like XNet, right? Like their model to me is super interesting. I'm not sure about the crypto component to it because I'm not, it doesn't, it feels slightly out of place, but I'm also very much a believer in the attempt that they're trying to make of like coordinating coverage in certain locations. And I've talked about that kind of stuff on Discord and in the Helium Discord. So I'm kind of interested in everything I see. I'm an investor in Hivemapper and Demo for full disclosure. So I think I think what they're doing is super cool on both ends. I love cars, so I'm like especially interested in what Demo's ultimately trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah, Geonet I've paid some attention to, but not as much as I should have. I think there's a bunch of other IoT attempts that honestly I find the least interesting, just because I don't know what they're offering that is distinct to what Helium did, or whatever their value prop is feels incredibly surface level, and I don't understand. So I've tended to ignore some of those, but
Sure.
yeah, I mean all of it I think is amazing, and I don't know if I would consider myself the godfather, or whether Helium was really the first. I mean, maybe something like Filecoin was first. I don't know, but Helium I think was probably the first to really try and do something that didn't live in a data center, and that was and I think that's been amazing to watch. And so whatever name I get for that is very gratifying.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. I will call something out here that I notice that you're doing a lot that I think is really important and frankly rad, is that you've always been since I came into the Discord, in September 2020, something like that. You've always been like really intellectually neutral across all of these different projects. Whenever a project came up, I've never seen you really say like, "Hey, this is a bad project" or whatever. You're very good about, I think, not only assessing the project in a neutral stance, but also setting the example that, hey, we are all in this thing together. We're all trying to figure this out. Nobody's got all of the perfect answers. And the way we get this ball down the field is by looking at all of these in a neutral way and just seeing what works and then going for that and not worrying about who's doing what works. So maybe on behalf of the community, thank you for setting such a great example.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think it's important. I mean, I think the industry, frankly, doesn't exist yet. Like this DY or DPIN, it's like it's nascent, and there isn't going to be a winner, right? I mean, look at the cellular playing field in every developed country. I mean, there are like multiple carriers and multiple MVNOs doing exactly the same thing, right? That are all able to differentiate in whatever way to succeed. And so, and I think especially in the United States, I mean, we're under fire for whatever reason. Like the crypto community is like become the enemy of the state, and I don't know why. Um,
Yeah, it's something
and so
new, right?
yeah, I do know, at least I think I know why, but it's annoying. And it sort of is a good reminder though, that whatever nuanced arguments we may have about whether one approach is better than the other, they are extremely nuanced. And ultimately we're all trying to do the same thing, ideally for the same end goal of sort of, I don't know, like sort of allowing people to participate in this type of economic structure. And I think it's,
Sure.
to me, it's super cool, and so I'm much more curious about the other projects than viewing them as competitors ever. And I can't think, quite honestly, of that many businesses that get put out of business by their competitor. It does happen. I'm not pretending that it doesn't, but like
Right.
Uber and Lyft lived together and both made a lot of money, and so it's fine,
They
right?
did
Like
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not worried about
Yeah.
competitors, and
Max
I don't
has
think
got a great
competitors
thing
should be
on
worried about us.
Pepsi and Coke and how those two things work together. Let's see if we can wrap this thing up with how people can get involved with mobile. I know the Wave 2 invites go out pretty soon. Do you want to talk about that and how people find that and participate?
Yeah, so Wave 2 invites are going out on June 15th, I think. So this time next week. Actually, I shouldn't say
Yep.
this time. It's a recorded show. Um, let's just say Thursday the 15th is when the Wave 2 invites go out. I think
Yep.
we'll also have more phone support then. So older Pixels will have physical SIMs available at that time. We'll also have Saga support, so Solana's phone, will also be happening at that time. So anyone with sort of a physical SIM device will be able to participate on June 15th. And then after that, we've got a lot of it's so difficult not to talk about the cool stuff that's coming because I think it is so cool. But yeah, Wi-Fi hotspots coming in the future, although I can't give you an exact date for that right now, but we're very close on it. And all of this lives at hellohelium.com. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I think are working on, but things like the discovery mapping and how to visualize that and how to sort of explain the coverage side of the story is something that I'm very focused on. I think the subscriber part, especially when you see what we're about to do, I think I shouldn't say will sell itself, but it will be obvious what the value proposition there is. But on the coverage side, I really want to make it blatantly obvious, where coverage is the most valuable, where it should go, where it's lacking, what rewards look like in terms of tokens, and just trying to, I think, do a better job of distilling the complexity of like all these hips and like how Helium works into like something that anyone can understand. And again, I don't think we did a great job of that in the IoT network. It was like read hip 15 and 17. It's like it's just good luck trying to
Sure.
understand it or
Yeah.
read it. And so I'm really focused on how to like tell the coverage side of the story as well as possible, because I think it creates the most likely success for us and Helium if subscribers end up using Helium more often.
Got it. I mean, at the risk of kind of diving in a little bit, do you want to walk me through kind of what HIP 82 is, when it can go to vote, and what that's going to mean for Helium Mobile?
Yeah, I mean, when it goes to vote is the great question of all. I've been harassing. This is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like I'm on the outside as much as everyone else. Like I'm harassing the foundation guys about getting HIP 82 to vote, just the way everyone else with a HIP in the queue is. Which, by the way, I think is awesome, and I think awesome for everyone to see that we're not special necessarily. And so HIP 82 is the improvement proposal that allows Helium Mobile to become a service provider on the 5G network. So part of the structuring of this network of networks is that the community has to approve service providers that want to come on and use the network. Because there's reward sharing and a bunch of other stuff that the service provider gets out of it. It has to go through this community process. So we're optimistic. We've worked pretty extensively with the community on like trying to figure out what was wrong with the HIP, and like I think it's went through a lot of revisions and a lot of changes, a lot of really good feedback from the community. And so, as frustrating and slow as it is sometimes, like to like, I wish it was done 3 months ago. It's also awesome to like actually go through this process with the community and like make it all better. And so, I'm very thankful for that. And I'm told it should be up for vote like imminently, like today, kind of imminently. But I know the foundation guys are working on, the technology, this thing called Realms, that is used for voting. So I'm hoping it's ready immediately. I know they're working hard on it.
Yeah, yeah, and I know Max Gold has been one of the authors on that. It's always fun to see you guys go back and forth on Discord. I always want to caution people when they kind of first see that they're like, "Hey, these guys know each other and they both respect each other's opinions." Like it looks like they're really mean and fighting, but they're actually just this is how they talk. It's
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
like
like
two
I'm like
brothers where you're like, "Don't get in the middle of that one."
yeah, it's just like those feel like the most calm conversation I have on most days. But like other people are like, hey, you guys should like take it easy. I'm like, it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
okay.
No, you
But
guys
yeah,
know
no,
each other. It's good.
I get how it looks from the outside sometimes.
Awesome. Amir, thanks so much for coming on and sharing the updates with us. Looking forward to kind of the next time we can get you on the show and talking about all the stuff that you can't talk about today, but really appreciate you coming on today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe so you get more great guests and great shows like this, and we'll see you on the next show. Lates.